College Hoops Coast to Coast. We have a awesome interview today with I would say probably the hottest team in the country. They've just broken a record for most wins. They may be continuing a record now. I think about it. I have to ask Coach. But they have the record for most wins in program history in a row, and they've won 9 straight. So we're going down south to Florida Atlantic. Coach Dusty May is joining us. Coach, what's going on?
Hey, Brian, I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, excited to do this, man. Excited to do it. So 9 games in a row. Just had a great win again just this weekend. You lost early on to Ole Miss, and it wasn't a super competitive game by score, but ever since then, you turn around, you beat Florida, your old stomping ground and place that you worked prior to FAU. You guys have not looked back since. What do you think it is that you learned in that Ole Miss game that you guys have applied in every game since?
Well, credit Ole Miss that they played very well. We didn't have our leading scorer at that time. Mike Forrest wasn't with us. He hadn't played yet. And we actually cut it to, I think it was a 5-point game with about 2.5 left. And we went up for an uncontested layup. And our big guy didn't realize how close he was to the rim and kind of put his hand, touched the rim as he was shooting the layup. So they wiped the layup off, gave us a technical. They scored the technical, and then they got it, made the first, missed the second, got an offensive rebound, and banged in a 3. So it went from basically a 3 or 4 point game to about a 7 or 8 point game in one possession, and that was kind of the end of it. But we actually did some good things. Ole Miss played very well, but without having a full team, and it did help us going forward. We stayed on the same road trip and went to Florida and learned from some of our mistakes, and definitely improved. So that seems like 5 to 8 years ago. At this point, that we've changed a lot since then, and we just try to work really, really hard every day and figure out the best way for us to play and continue to improve. And we have an unbelievable group of guys.
Yeah, talk about this group. I mean, it's obvious they're unbelievable in just how you guys have played so well together. We'll get into some of the numbers and details, but what is it about this group that you talked about in your opening press conference? I believe you said you're going to recruit winners. That was a big deal to you, guys that wanted to win and do some things there that hadn't maybe been done, and you're doing that. What is it about the guys you recruited that were a part of that vision, and what is it about this group that's been able to come together and make this thing so special?
Naturally, the personality of our team, they're extremely competitive. They love basketball. They love working. If we said we're taking 3 days off practice, out of our 13 scholarship guys, probably 11 or 12 would be in every single day getting some working on their own. They're very, very self-motivated. They're driven, and they really enjoy each other's company. So it's been very refreshing in an era where our business is almost becoming individual and also very transactional. To have a group that really, really cares for each other, and I can't imagine these guys not being close friends long after they leave FAU. So it's a blast coming to work every day and being a part of this group.
Yeah, there's so many things we can talk about with this team, but you don't have a 20-point scorer. You actually don't even have a 15-point scorer. 14 is your leader. 3 guys in double figures, I believe, or is it 2? 3 guys in double figures. But the unique part, you have almost 9 guys, or you have 9 guys averaging 5.5 or more, which doesn't sound like a lot, but in a college basketball game, if you're averaging that means on any game, that 5.5 guy could have a 10-point game. And the next game, maybe he doesn't score because he's doing the other things. So to have 10 guys on your team that can go in and score double figures in any game, what is that part like, and how have you been able to kind of empower your entire roster offensively?
Brian, it sounds a little cliche, but they sacrifice, and you say we don't have that. A lot of these guys have scored. BJ Greenlee's a great example. He averaged double digits the last couple of years, and now he's playing more efficiently. He's taking care of the ball better. He's shooting good percentages. Nick Boyd played really well as a freshman 2 years ago, averaged about 6 a game then, and sat out last year with an injury. So we have 8 of our top 9 returning producers back. Yep. And then we added Nick, and then we added a couple of young guys that we really, really like and will be important to the program. But, Jalen Gaffney from UConn, a lot of times when a Power 5 guy comes to this league or to the transfer, I don't even want to say down, but transfer to a different level, They want their hunting numbers, their hunting stats, and
Yep.
he overpasses. He makes us better. He doesn't care about scoring. So I don't think it's hard for our guys to sacrifice because it's kind of who they are as people. And
Right.
then we have the group that came in together with Giancarlo Rosado. I thought he played as well as any big man we've had last game, and he played 17 minutes. And Vlad Golden, I thought, played phenomenal, and he played 18 minutes. So
Right. Right.
almost every game, I feel guilty that they didn't play more, but they don't complain. They bring it the next day, and our practices have almost the same intensity as the game because of the parity of our roster. We have 9 guys that I think any of them on a marginal team would average, like you said, 15 points a game. And we have a couple guys that
No
if they
doubt.
were on our first year team, I think they would average 20 or 20 plus. They're just not because of the way we're built, and they're all committed to winning.
Yeah, I coached against that first year team. Don't remind me some of those flashbacks. But even though I know it was building, we didn't win that game, coach. So I got to give you credit. I've seen it firsthand. So yeah, all these guys are averaging, most of them 16 or more minutes a game, almost 17 minutes a game. Hard to manage that. The team stats have been impressive. Let's talk offensive side first. 50% from the field, 40 from three, getting to the free throw line enough times to really put pressure on teams. What is it offensively other than just the sacrifice? I mean, there's something that's going in there's something that's happening that's making the ball go in other than just having talented guys. Because a lot of people have talented players, but to be that efficient from the floor, almost 50, over 40 as a team is almost unheard of.
Up until last game, I think we were number 3 in the country in 3-point percentage,
Yep.
and we're probably top 15 or so now. And I'm not sure what we dropped. The numbers change a little bit by day. But we've never recruited shooters. We've never went out and said we've got to get a shooter. We're recruiting this kid. It
Right.
was always kind of along the lines of he's got a good form. We think he'll be a good shooter, but he's really
Mm.
competitive. He's driven to be good. He's got great character. So because of that, we have good athletes who really defend and they compete, but they're also good shooters, and some of them are borderline great shooters because of the work they put in. So they came in as either marginal and they've gotten really good, or they came in as good and they've become extremely good shooters because of their work ethic and the time they put in, and then also because they get good shots. We drive and kick. We take what the defense gives us, and because of that, our guys are usually shooting a pretty high percentage shots. And that's probably the thing in year 5 that we've improved the most is our shot selection.
Right.
As a first time head coach, the first couple of years, that was so far down my priority
Right.
set list of priorities that we probably took it for granted. And now our chemistry's better because we have pass first guys. We're better on the glass. We're more efficient transition defense. So
Yep.
everything is lined up better. And part of it's we've become better coaches. And part of it is just our guys. Um, they really want to win. And when we try to figure out the way for us to win, they buy into it and really try to execute what we're trying to do.
Yeah, absolutely. What's the part, Coach? I know player development. You talked about recruiting and player development also in your opening press conference. I'm going back to my as a friend. I was excited when you got the opportunity, so of course I'm following. And player development is something people talk about, but you've actually done a great job of actually embodying that in your program as you've spoken to some of the numbers. What is it about the player development approach that you guys have been able to kind of figure out with your team? Obviously, you identify the right guys that fit you, but what is it that you think kind of speaks to some of those things? Because there's obviously a relationship piece too. So I'm getting on a couple of different parts. But for those guys that were starters and were putting up those numbers, now they maybe aren't. So they're sacrificing and buying in. So a little bit of the player development, the buy-in, and I'm gonna add one more. So sorry, I'm throwing a bunch at you at once. But within that, you talked about just now. You talked about. I'm gonna come back to the next one. I'm gonna give you those two, and I'll come back to the next one.
Well, player development, we have a group, a staff that really enjoys helping our guys get better.
Right.
And coaches say we're never going to be transactional. And if this team was 500 right now, we would be having a blast with them because of the way they work, prepare, and sometimes the wins don't come as fast as you'd like. For example, last year we felt like we had a really good team, and we were 8-8 after 16 games.
Mm.
And so it doesn't. But our guys, they brought it every single day. They came to work. And we've become better teachers. We've spent a couple of years in the COVID. I mean, one of the positives of COVID was we looked at it almost as a sabbatical where we're trapped indoors, and the only thing you can do now is start watching Netflix and HBO Max, or you can really lock in on becoming better coaches and teachers. And I think our staff did that. We became much better at teaching,
Mm.
understanding what we wanted to do, how we wanted to do it, and had more time because there wasn't a lot of recruiting. We did some Zooms, but there wasn't a lot of recruiting. You're not
Not
around the gym
traveling.
every day. You're
Yep.
not traveling. So you just had a lot more time to think and do a lot of self-evaluation. And so we became better teachers and figured out how we wanted to play, how we wanted to go about it on a daily basis. And every day we're searching for the best way for us to do things. But it starts with our guys. Mike Forrest is a fifth-year player, and
Yeah.
we benefited through COVID for him having an extra year. But we brought him off of the bench for 2.5 of his 5 years, and he's never batted an eye. Whatever you need me to do. So anytime and now Elijah Martin, who the coaches picked as a first-team All-League guy, he was injured, missed a couple games, so we started bringing him off the bench, and we were playing well. So he's coming off the bench. So we've got 4 really, really good players that
Yep.
are all borderline All-League guys that are going to be that are coming off the bench, and they don't complain. They don't. They just support the teammates that are playing at that time. So it makes us very, very dangerous to have 9 or 10 guys that you can't key on any of them because they're all capable of dropping 20 that night.
Yeah, Mike Forrest was a part of that team the first year, your first year, that we took an L to. So I saw it firsthand. Good player. You knew then he had a chance. I think he was a double-figure scorer as a freshman, or maybe right around 9.
Yeah.
But he was scoring then, so you knew as this kid continues to stay, he's going to continue to get better. You mentioned the shot selection. That's the other part of the question I was going to ask about. How do you teach shot selection better? Like, I know that may sound like an easy thing, and I know coaches want to know those kind of things and they're interested, but how did you personally teach that better?
Well, this year we reworded how we addressed our shot selection. And
Nice.
if the guys took a questionable shot, and we have very coachable guys anyway, they're very compliant to each other, they're very compliant to the staff. So we just said, if someone took a bad shot, we just call them in and tell them to look at the 4 guys they're playing with and ask, is that the absolute best shot that this group can get? If you think it is, I'm good with it. But I think we all know that this group is talented enough, they're skilled enough
That's
that
good.
we don't need to take shots like that anymore. And I would even say, hey, in year 1 and year 2, if you played on this team, I would have said that's a great shot. Do not turn that
Take
one
it.
down. We need
Right.
But where we are now with this, is the talent level, the depth, the ability to have so many weapons. We said we don't, that's not the best shot this group can get.
Right.
And then we're always just evaluating, our breakdowns. If we're not going to tell you not to shoot this shot, but we're going to tell you that this is the percentage, this is the points per possession, and we're trading that for this or this for that, and it doesn't make sense from a math standpoint. So we don't ever say we're not shooting this shot, or we're not doing this, or we're only going to take this, because the defense dictates that a lot. But we're saying we're going to get a volume of these or a volume of these, and we like where we'll be at the end of the day.
Yeah, let's talk defensive side of the ball, Coach. Would you say you're a defensive-minded coach first? I almost get that impression that that's the natural side of the ball for you, but I could be wrong. Maybe offense is.
Well, as an assistant, I was usually responsible for the defensive side of the ball, and really enjoyed it and loved it as an assistant, and felt like that's a much better role for the assistant coaches to be more responsible for the defensive side of the ball. As a head coach, it's been more offense, and the staff. We all have been together now, so we have continuity. Our players have continuity, so we all know exactly what needs to happen for us to win, and it's very collaborative. We all brainstorm, and it's kind of a big, everyone together figuring out the best way for us to guard and do things. So really, whoever has the scout is almost like the head defensive coach that game. And then we have one assistant that works hand in hand with myself offensively, and it's a collaborative effort there. So our assistants have a lot of they have a lot of input. They have a lot of responsibility. They do 90% of the substitutions. They do a lot of offense, a lot of defense, a lot of special teams, a lot of the development. So it's a true collaboration. And when you look at it from our entire roster, there's contributions coming from every single person.
Yeah, well said. So I'm curious defensively. This is kind of a couple of things. So 9-game winning streak, and all but one of those is by double digits. Plus you win in Florida. So you're winning by double digits. But an interesting part of the stats is that teams are turning it over 13 times a game against you guys, but they're only averaging 8 assists, which almost makes it feel like if you're not getting very many assists, you're not sharing the ball. You're almost having to play on your own, one on one a little bit. What is it about the defense that's allowed you to, one, have these double figure wins so consistently, and then also just it's an interesting stat, in the play-by-play world, excuse me, in the color commentating world, you kind of dive into stats, at least I do, to learn more about the team without having watched them play a ton. And to only have teams averaging 8 assists, on the flip side, you guys are sharing the ball well. What do you think that part is in your defense?
Oh, it's by design, the way we play. By nature, I love switching because I hate facing switching. But each team is different, and there's usually some growing pains that come with switching. And
Yep.
our year one was our best up until this season. Our first 4 years, our year one team was our biggest and our best defensive team by far, and we had to be because we played big, we played less skilled, but we
Yep.
were very switchable, and those guys we had could move their feet. The big guys could move their feet and guard guards, and the guards were tough enough to guard big. So it made sense for us. And in the last couple of years, we didn't feel like it fit our roster. So we got away from switching, and we didn't defend the 3-point line very well because usually teams run pretty good stuff. I mean, if you want to draw up a set to get a shot, it's a lot easier to draw up a set to get a 3-point shot on the move than it is to get a
Right.
layup or get a paint touch. So,
Right.
the switching's really helped us defend the three. I think it's kept teams off balance, and then we always want to play different. We've never felt like we're one of, I love this place. This is the best job in the world for us, but we have a lot of constraints, and so we've always felt like we can't just line up and out recruit
Mm.
some of the teams in our league and some of the league teams we're going to in the other leagues. So we have to do it through development, and we have to play different. So when you face us, you're not going against the same, your reserves in practice or whatnot. So we always felt like we needed to have some competitive advantages simply
Yeah.
by being different. And we're at the point now where we do feel like we play a little bit different than most teams. And because of the switching, we're able to defend the 3-point line better. Our guys do an unbelievable job of guarding the basketball one-on-one, and we are strong and athletic. So we're able to get up underneath the ball, apply some pressure, and then also not get beat. And by not getting beat, we're rarely out of rebounding position. We're rarely we just do a good job of keeping bodies on bodies through
Yeah.
switching, through
Yeah.
scouts, and that's probably the thing we hang our hat on the most is simply guarding the basketball. And we spend all summer, all spring, all summer, all fall. We guard the basketball one-on-one every single day, and we feel like it's a big part of our player development piece of playing one-on-one offensively, but more importantly, of guarding the ball one-on-one. I mean, we'll go smalls versus bigs. We've got about 8 different one-on-one drills, and we do 1 or 2 of them every single day, or at least 99% of our practices.
Mm.
So we do feel like that's the key to us being an elite defensive team, being able to guard the ball and keeping bodies on bodies.
I love that. And it doesn't put you in rotations, right? So now you're
Yeah.
able to,
Yeah.
make
Well,
people.
it's a little tricky, Coach. We stay in rotations quite a bit. We rotate a lot. If you've got a big who can shoot, we're going to play our ball screen coverage, whatever it is that game, and then we're going to full rotate. But because we only rotate and we never stunt off
Mm.
the ball, like we'll stunt at a ball handler with the fake activity, but we rarely stunt at a shooter or whatever. It's always a full rotation, and we do rotation drills a lot. So our guys, by being on the same page and being in the program, they know that even when we're beat, there should be 4 guys with some type of natural rotation that they've worked on or seen a lot. And then even though it's not the original body you're on, you're still keeping bodies
Right.
on bodies.
Well, I think in listening to you, if you are rotating because you switch, you're rotating and you're used to switching and guarding different types of people and different types of lineups. So it makes perfect sense. Indiana roots, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Absolutely, yeah. I spent my whole childhood and
Yeah.
early coaching career in Indiana.
Yeah. So Indiana is as we know it, basketball country. I mean, there's no bigger place as far as the roots of basketball. Your team is now 42nd in KenPom. I'm sure you know all this stuff. And in the mid majors, you're only behind Gonzaga, who's not really a mid major, if we're being honest. San Diego State, Utah State, and St. Mary's. What is that like as a kid who grew up loving basketball, loving the game itself? Now you're a head coach, and your team is at kind of those statistical, not just it looks good or the record looks good, but like the data and the numbers behind it support it. What is that like for you now, kind of walking in that?
Well, being at all levels and following the numbers closely, I'm not as religious about the numbers as some guys, but we look at them every single day and study them and all that and use them to teach better and to reinforce what we're preaching. Um, but I know how hard it is for lows and mid majors to climb up in the computer rankings because it's
100%.
simply where you start. We don't all have the same starting point.
Yep.
So when you're at a Power Five, it's hard to move down out of the top 100. I mean,
Yep.
you have to lose some games you shouldn't to move down, and if you're not in that Power Five group, it's hard to really move up into that upper echelon. So it's a credit to our guys, the hard work, the effort, the taking care of business every single day because it gets harder and harder every game when you start winning because now we've always been the hunter and now I don't want to say we're the hunted because there's still some other teams in our league that I think are still more hunted than us. But we're on that path to where we're becoming a big game on other teams' schedule.
Yeah, for sure. And you've done a great job there. It's been cool to watch from afar. I'm curious. So Kevin Sweeney, my illustrious teammate here with Coast to Coast, he couldn't join us today, but his favorite stat, I'll just read it to you. His favorite stat: 5 seasons over 500 in the D1 program history before you got there. Now you've been over 500 every year, and now it's legitimate turning team in year 5. What is it like, even when you hear that or when you think about that? I know there's games to be played, so you can't really get lost in too much of that type of stuff. But it is something to be said about the consistency because I think that's as important as having this one outlier season, but the rest of them don't feel like it feels like when you have that consistency, that says it's something to what you guys are doing as a staff, what your players are doing. It represents something bigger. What would you speak to when you hear that?
Well, I think that's who we are as a program. Everyone's extremely consistent. We don't have a whole lot of guys riding emotional waves,
Right.
coming into
Right.
work every day. If we lose, I think even in the first couple of years, some of our guys were shocked we would lose a game, and they would come into office and it's, "Hey man, how you doing? Uh, great to see you. Let's get back after today." And they were shocked that we weren't like angry at them
Right.
because we didn't win. And we've always kind of prided ourselves that if our guys come to work every day with great intention to improve, with great attitudes, and they're coachable, and they let us and we don't light into them very often, but if they let us push and challenge and coach them, then we're fine with the results, and we're always going to be searching and fighting for better results. But it's not life or death. We love our guys. We love being around them. We love going to work. All we ask is a great attitude and a great work ethic. So I think that's part of the reason probably. And people don't realize in year one we had a really good team until
Yeah.
Stapleton and Jalen Ingram and Jalen
I was
Sprigg
there.
all got hurt
Yep.
in the first third of the season. I think we started out 8-1 that year, and we that team on paper was probably more talented than the team we have now. And we just got bit with the injury bug on the wrong guys. So I know how quickly it can all change. But also now we have the depth and experience where we can overcome some injuries. Elijah Martin's missed games. John L. Davis has missed game. Mike
Yep.
Forrest has missed several
Yep.
games. And we've been able to overcome it because of our depth and our teamwork. So yeah, we've had a lot of good players. We've been fortunate enough. We've taken a few guys that had a history of injuries, and we gambled with them, and sometimes they paid off, and sometimes they didn't. But
Right.
the foundational guys, the Mike Forrest and guys like that we knew early on. I can't remember the exact moment, but it was early his freshman season, and we played Mike as a freshman point guard, and
Yep.
he played at a very successful high school, but he wasn't ready for the level that we needed him to be at. And he had a bunch of turnovers one game, 5, 6, 7. And it was a Sunday morning. I couldn't sleep. I came in probably before church or whatever. And I walk into my office at maybe 7:30 on a Sunday morning. And I hear a ball bouncing. I look on the court, and he's out on the court, triple goggles, dribbling 2 balls, like really putting in the work, sweating. And I mean, he had been in there for a while, and I didn't necessarily like the workout he was doing as a coach. I do think he's been efficient with his time, but I was like, man, I'm going to ride with that guy. Like, if
Yep.
this means that much to him, and this is how he responds to a horrendous game, then he's going to be a major piece. And that's probably the best decision we made, is to really invest in him. And even when he had bad games and had his moments, it was always like he's our guy. He embodies everything we want to be, and so he's had a big part of this.
Yeah, and it's so easy to look at it now and see the success and say, "Oh yeah, like Dusty May, he's a good guy, good coach." Like I'm not surprised, but it's a lot harder than what people think it is, and it takes moments like those for you to say, "All right, I'm going to invest in this kid and believe in this." So I guess if you could speak to just the vision that you had, I don't necessarily want to ask, is it ahead of or behind, but is it harder than you thought it would be to create this type of program with that job when you, let's face it, we just talked about the numbers. They hadn't consistently had any winning seasons over 500. So what is it like now to be walking in that, and what's the hard part behind it that people wouldn't see, that you're like, okay, this moment was a moment that I knew that we were doing it right.
Oh, Coach, I don't know if there's ever been a moment where I thought, man, I know we're doing it right. We're
Right.
always searching for the right way for this group to do
Right.
things. And it's everything. It's travel, it's practice, it's workouts. Just what does this team need? What do we lack? And really just try to understand and know our team as well as anyone else, if not better. And then we change based on that. And we're not married to any system. We're not married to any way of doing. So if we see something like we'll change on a whim, and we may do it for 2 days and say, you know what,
Right.
that's a bad decision. That's not right for us. But we look at a lot of different stuff, and we're not afraid to experiment and be wrong. And we're not in a pressure cooker job. They they want us to bring in good guys and represent the school and the university well. And there was never a moment I thought, wow, we've arrived. And even to this day, I mean, we've got a lot of work to do.
Right.
I know our guys were awesome in practice today, and I know they'll be awesome tomorrow, but we've got a tough game against Northern Kentucky Wednesday. And
Yep.
then we go to North Texas right after Christmas, and then UAB coming in here. So if you ever want to run a Christmas, uh, have your league send you the schedule, and you're going to visit North Texas immediately after. So, yeah, it's been awesome, just because of the people that have been in the program and starting from scratch and really trying to do it together. But we definitely haven't arrived. We're not anywhere near where we want to be, but we know we're getting closer. And we only have one senior on our roster now, so we're optimistic we can keep
Yep.
this train together for a while, because without a doubt, the staff continuity, the player continuity, and then the player staff continuity, I think is underrated,
Yeah.
especially now in this the transfer portal and everybody just making a move just to make a move. Without really, I think, doing the necessary research to make sure they're making good decisions for themselves. But it is what it is. If we have lost a few guys to higher levels that wanted something different, and we were able to bounce back and bring in some guys behind them that have been very impactful to the program.
Yeah, as the good saying is now starting to trend and go, is deported giveth and deported taketh away, or
Yeah.
vice versa. I think the good part about it, from when I was in college basketball, your first year, I was at UTEP, of course, in the same conference, and it felt like to get a grad transfer was impossible because they were going to go way too high.
Yeah.
Um, and if you lost a kid to grad transfer, it was so hard to replace that, right? You couldn't get that back the same way. Transfers weren't as high rate because guys had to sit out, so it wasn't as encouraging. But now, if you lose a high level player, at least you know you can get that level of talent back. Maybe they haven't produced in the same way, or maybe whatever that case may be. So there is some balance in it, and I think you guys have figured that part out. Couple more things I'll ask you about before I get to our funny story. I always got to ask that. But the adaptability, you've obviously talked about that. Most coaches kind of have their system and they stick with it. What is it about you that embraces that part? And I think you've kind of always been like that, even as an assistant. Coach White, of course, talked about when you're at Florida and at La Tech being, one of the most important parts to the puzzle. What is it about that adaptability that has allowed you personally to do that? And I guess, how do you find your own security in that? Because I think a lot of times coaches want to do things, but it's like the minute it doesn't work, it's like, okay, let's go back, because it feels safe and it's hard to change, right? So that would be one question. And obviously, way ahead, you're going to another league. You kind of touched on it. What is that like for the university to adapt to going to the American Conference coming up soon?
Well, I'll start with the American Conference. We're very blessed to be making this jump to join Memphis and Wichita State and SMU and Temple and these historic programs. And obviously, football is a big piece of it. Our football job is one of the best. I mean, it's a unique situation down here in South Florida with a lot of
Right.
recent success, and also the just a really cool spot. But for us to join them, it's going to be great for the marketability of our university, the exposure, all those things that come with it. And it's not much different than Conference USA as far as just I guess level of talent and level of
Right.
play. When you look at UAB and North Texas and Western Kentucky and Charlotte and look at what Coach Perez doing with Rice.
Right.
I mean, I could go down the list at the success of our league and how well Conference USA typically does against the American Conference head to head. I don't think the level of play, other than the talent that Memphis is going to have every single year, is that drastic. But you are going into something new. It's unknown. You're going into some big time basketball environments. Wichita State has one of the best followings in all of basketball. So
Yep.
you're going into some different environments, but also it feels new. I think that's part of, sometimes these young players, they just want something different and something
Right.
new. They're used to switching high schools. They're used to switching AU teams. And I'm not saying that in a negative way.
Yeah.
We're all wired differently. I know when I was young, I would take a different job and I would be reinvigorated because it was new and it was new relationships. So like I said, everyone's wired differently, but it also allows us to almost take our program to something new and different and unknown. And so I think that'd be reinvigorating for all of us. Obviously this year we'd love to go out with a potential championship in Conference USA. And then Brian, I forgot the first part of the question. I know the second.
Just you personally. I mean, it's a hard thing as a coach to change, and you've constantly in this interview, this conversation, talked about changing styles of play every year, adapting to your personnel, which I think every coach does that to a degree, but you're talking about whole systems, and I think that's hard to do, but you're searching for what's best every year too for that team, which I think is a part of being a coach. But I think more so just the ability to adapt to new things and adopt new things and research and find out, okay, let's do this year with this team, and not just automatically throw it out when it doesn't work the first couple of days or first couple of games or whatever the case may be. It seems like that's a unique strength of yours and your staff's. Where do you think that comes from, and how do you find confidence adapting this stuff?
Well, we have a very curious staff that's always trying to learn, grow, and get better. And then even when we're tossed around a new idea or concept, we'll go out on the court, we'll walk through it, we'll talk about it. Heck, we may try to use it at noon ball against the GAs and managers, just to really try to dig deep. And then the other thing is we're not afraid to fail. I mean, if we make a mistake, we're not scared of failure. We're not trying to just play it safe. We're going to do what we think is best for this particular group.
Right.
Short term and long term, and we trust the results. And sometimes he said, "Man, I made a terrible decision to do that," and other times we say, "Man, I'm so glad, so happy we chose to do that because our guys have really done an amazing job of implementing it and executing it." So there's both sides of it, but I think the curiosity and we don't fear failure. I mean, even late in games, you see sometimes your guys are a little bit shook, and it's fellas, if you miss the free throw, we're going to find a way to get a stop. We're going to find a way to get the rebound back. And then if we don't, then we're going to work like crazy the next day to make sure it happens. But I think sometimes in this, newer generation, a lot of these guys are scared to fail, and they're scared of what comes with failing.
Yep.
In reality, you're playing Division I basketball. You're already extremely successful. That's how I look at it in my coaching career.
Okay.
I want to be a high school coach in Indiana, so I've surpassed any expectation. I have no vision. I had no visions of grandeur of being a national championship coach. I just wanted to coach basketball, be in a gym every day, and help young guys who wanted to use it as a vehicle like it did me. I mean, this game's given me everything. So I think all those things are kind of rolled into one. But and more than anything else, it's what we try to spend a lot of time figuring out, putting a lot of thought into what gives this team the best chance
to win,
to reach its maximum potential.
Yeah, there's a lot of perspective in that, and probably a lot of peace, it sounds like, and security in who you are. I love what I do. I have a perspective of the bigger picture is bigger than this one moment, which I think definitely with players, with social media now, and just kind of just being a little more, or even a lot more self-conscious about failing, like you said. I think when you can encourage that failure and push through it as a team and as a unit, and you get to the other side of it, and you realize, like, I don't have to be scared of anything. It makes your team adopt this fearless approach, which is a large reason why your program as a whole has consistently done that. And now you have a different level of talent all the way through. So it's it's kind of helped put it over the top, which has been cool to see. You talked about continuity with staff, so I wanted to give a chance to kind of mention some of the guys on your staff, and then you've also had two guys in particular that I know well and are close friends of mine as well, and Akeem and Eric Pastrana, that have gone on to go almost in a sense go where you were with Coach White, which has been really cool, to Florida, and now those guys are at Georgia and doing well. What would you say about what those guys gave to the program and how cool that exchange was? And then now to have the consistency in staff really since then, what has that been like as well? And speak to those guys and their names a little bit, if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll start with Akeem and Eric, the two you mentioned that are gone now.
Yeah,
Unlike most coaches, when they get their first job and they've never coached AAU, other than coaching AAU, have never coached all the time out in college, they hire all the guys they know, trust, and are really
right,
familiar with. Where
right,
I did a little bit different, where I didn't hire the guys that I'd worked with before. I kind of wanted something completely new and different, and I was never really worried about the loyalty piece because I don't expect guys to be loyal to me. I expect all of us to be loyal to the program and make the best decisions possible for all of us. So, probably the best thing I did was hiring guys I didn't know very well, and so the first couple months you're really getting to know each other. You're throwing stuff at the wall. You're talking, because if you hire everyone that's like-minded, that's been where you've been, you've worked together, you already know what each other think, and you could finish each other's sentences a lot of the time. So I want a different perspective. So I didn't know Eric very well. I knew him in passing, thought he was a really nice guy. But Kyle Church, who came with me immediately from Florida, he had been with us a lot tech as our GA and video guy and ops guy, and then he went with us to Florida as an ops guy. And his father's a coach. He grew up around coaching, so like he knew what he was doing. And so he came originally, and it was Eric, who he was good friends with, and he really pushed hard to hire Eric. And we needed a guy with South Florida recruiting connections, and Eric's very connected down here. And then Akeem was just a mutual friend of some guys I worked with, of Jordan Mincy and Darius Nichols. Said, hey, you should take a look at. They gave me 3, 4, 5 guys that they really respected, that thought would do a good job, and I just hit it off with Akeem, and those guys have moved on and to Power Five jobs and done a great job. And since then, other than Kyle, who like I said, have leaned on from day one. Brandon Gilbert is assistant to the head coach. He does basically everything behind the scenes. He's been with us from day one. And then the following year, we had Todd Abernathy. And actually, I knew Todd when he played in high school and came to our team camps at Indiana. His dad was on the national championship IU team. So we share a lot of the same upbringing and qualities. And he'd helped us get Carlos Schillings when he left Ole Miss. Todd had coached him. So we had a lot of relationship with Todd. So when Eric left, there wasn't even an interview process. It was just, hey, Todd, do you want this job? And he said, I do. And said, okay, here's what we're going to do. So there was never any, he just, it's a strange story. And I'll tell this speaks to the character of TA. In the first year we talked about a position, and I called him. I just said, hey, I've got the guys I'm going to hire. I really respect you, but I just, it's not going to work out right now. And I think all of us in coaching know how that usually goes. The relationship is permanently damaged. About a week later, he calls and says, hey, Carlos is going, just went into the portal. Blah, blah, blah. He said, here, do you want him? And I said, man, I'd love to have him. We studied him. He's good, this and that. And I said, what do we need to do? Like, he said, it's done. If you want him, you just need to call him and have it, make sure that you guys click and there's a good conversation, and call his parents, and it should be done. And so I called his parents, I think, first, and they'd already studied the university, the area, and they were ready to go. So one phone call, and we had a starting center who was an upper half starting center. I mean, a really talented player that if he didn't have ACL injuries would have been, I think playing at an even higher level. And so you tell a guy you can't hire him, and then a week later he hand delivers you a really good player. It doesn't happen in college basketball. It was almost like after that he would be trying to hurt us with that player.
no
Uh,
doubt.
so that spoke so of his character that the next year it was an easy transition. And then this past season we had a Drew Williamson who was at a Division II Virginia State, and it was kind of the same thought process where a lot of guys just try to hire another, a guy they see on the road in recruiting circles. And I love the fact that he was at a Division II. He was from North Carolina. He had ties in Virginia on that east. So I thought too it would open up some new recruiting doors, and just a different thought process of him not being in Conference USA or in the Sun Belt or in the same circles. So it's kind of the same thing. We're just somebody who would bring a completely different thought process to the table and to the team. And he's been an awesome mentor to our guys. He's a great teacher, great coach, but more importantly, and then we added KT Harrell this year as our director of operations, who replaced Ben Gonzalez, who Coach White stole to Florida to go up there. So KT was a great player at Auburn. Actually, he came to our camps when I was assistant at UAB when he's at Alabama. So, I've known of him for a while, but another great mentor, great teacher, great, does a very, very thorough with all the behind the scenes stuff. So the staff's phenomenal. But more importantly, they're better people than they are anything else. And we have those guys there's no egos, there's no stepping on toes. It's a true group effort. And every single day it's like you're hanging out with your dorm buddies or your frat buddies where we laugh, we joke, we work hard, but we try to not take ourselves too serious and have a good time with it.
Right. Because like you said, you're really living a dream if that's your dream, like to be a college coach and to do what you're doing. The place you live it's not bad. It's not bad.
Right, it got cold this morning. I take cold showers in the morning.
You didn't know what to do.
I can tell how cold it is outside by how cold the water is, and it was cold this morning. So I checked the temperature and it got down to 63. So it's been a rough day.
I love it. All right, so while we're laughing, you got to tell us a funny story. And then I got a question I think is going to be funny at the end too, because you mentioned something earlier I want to dive in on, but I'm gonna let you go first with the funny story.
Well, another one came to mind as we were talking about Mike Forrest. I think I'm going to use it.
Okay, good.
It was first year, and obviously as a first year coach, you're trying to figure out: are you going to stand up? Are you going to sit down? Are you going to yell at the refs? Are you try to joke with the refs? You're trying to figure out all these things that most people would never even imagine goes through your head.
Right.
What are you going to say if you lose? What are you going to say if you win? These are things, the crazy thoughts that are going on through your head during the game.
Right.
Well, we lose to Lynn, a Division II team in Boca.
Yeah, I'll say right there.
The first time we ever played in front of fans.
Yep.
Brian White hires a new coach, came from Florida, this and that. We signed 10 new guys. We're supposed to have a good season. Right. And we lose to Lynn on our home court to start out. Yep. And so I go in the locker room after the game, and I don't think I did a very good job. And Lynn was really good. They had a good team. Coach Price is a great coach, and we didn't play very well. And so I'm trying to think of ways to spin this to be positive because we have UCF, a really good UCF team coming in the next. We had to go up there the next week. So I'm thinking, how can I be positive? So I go in the locker room, and we had Zay Stapleton, who was a big time player, probably the most talented player that maybe I've ever coached before his injury. 6'7", genetic freak. Could shoot it, could do everything. I mean, the
post up was a bucket, shoot it, fall out of bounds to make it.
When he got going, I mean, and he was on a minute restriction because of his knee. So when he checked in the game, everyone knew, hey, we need to get Zay some shots because he could run off 15 or 20 straight if he got going. But anyway, so I go in the locker room after the game and say, Zay, man, I've seen you play a lot of games and a lot of practices. I've never seen you play that bad. We're going to be fine. Mike, you're all-state basketball player. You just won a state championship. There's no way you could play worse than that. And if you knew Mikey, this joke would be better. He looked at me and he said, no. I said, Mike, you can play worse than that. I think he had probably like 4 points, maybe 7 or 8 turnovers. Yeah. And he said, yeah. And I said, well, okay, let me rephrase this. There's no way you're going to play that bad again because we're going to get better and this and that. But it's just the way he said, I said, there's no way you can play worse than this. He's like, no, I can't. I'm like, Mike, work with me here. So that's good. Yeah, that's a good first-year head coach story where you're trying to spin it to be positive, and then Mike just completely takes the wind out of your sails. And then the other one that we talked about was when this job came open. My mentor asked me, "Do you want the job?" And I said, "No, not really." And then Kyle Church kind of broke it down to me. He said, "Have you ever been to Boca, first of all?" And I said, "No." I'd been in the area, and he said, "Do you realize how you have 3 sons? How you're going to deprive them of the lifestyle in Boca?" And I'm not going to tell you all the other the side notes to that story, but I said, you know what? I guess I better go check it out. And for whatever reason, the GPS kicked me off in Delray, and I took A1A into Boca, and at that point, I was sold. And before I even seen campus, I said, you know what? You can win here if this is where the campus is. So, very, very blessed to have this job. I love it here. But more importantly, love who we work with every single day from the staff to the players.
Now, the noon ball is the part I was going to ask you about. You said you tried some things in noon ball, which means you're still playing noon ball. And I think I did see a video, Coach, of you playing at maybe it's some kind of charity event you guys had or some kind of some kind of camp or something. But anyway, Coach, tell us about what that noon ball game looks like. What's the
Well,
score for,
I'm
Coach?
semi-retired now, Brian. About 2 years ago, I'm playing in a men's league, and it's a national tournament. There's teams from 30 to 40, 40 to 50, 50
Can
to
I just
60.
time out? Do you think there's any other head coaches, very few, playing in the country Division I, playing in men's league still as a head coach?
Not many. Well,
No.
the group of guys I was playing with are really, really good. I mean, they're like college All-Americans. Dante Calabria, some guys that played in this area. I mean, really good players.
He can play.
And I've improved as I've gotten older. And I was playing and I tore my shoulder, so I was sitting out. And they asked me to play, and I said, you know what, I can't play many minutes, but I will play.
Yeah.
They were a couple guys short. And the first possession, this guy from New York starts talking crazy to me. So and I was thinking, I'm not even going inside the 3-point line. If you catch me in there on offense, then take me out. So he starts talking. I get it on a pitch ahead. It's one-on-one, and I see the guy that had just been chirping. So I put my head down, make a move, and somebody comes out of nowhere to try to block it. I land funny, and I tear up my knee. So I had a full year where I just tried to rehab it. And then this past May or June, I had major surgery on my knee. So now I'm lifting weights and I'm walking the track. But I'm hoping for maybe I'm almost 46. I'm hoping by 47 I'll be able to jump out and get in some noon ball.
Nice. So you're making a comeback then, comeback trip.
And our staff's gotten younger too with KT and some of those other and Drew and TA and those guys. They're still really, really good players. So I think I could be a very good supporting cast member.
Nice. Are we like a JJ Barea scout report? Like, what's the scout report here, Coach? What are we looking at?
You'd have to get the scout report. There's been a lot of faith. I think the only constant would be that I'm accused of fouling a lot and being aggressive. So I think if I was a football coach, I'd be on par where I use all my fouls. But it's a lot of fun. I still love just being in the gym every single day with whatever we're doing. But you said JJ Barea. He just retired to Miami, so he comes up and watches practice and kind of hangs around with our guys. So it's nice. Really cool being in this area to see all the basketball people that just kind of stick their head in. The former Hall of Fame coaches or legendary coaches will just stop in for practice. So it's really neat being in this area and have so many resources to improve yourself.
Yeah, excited about what you're doing. Obviously, I know you all the way back from, I think I first met Coach, I was at Abilene Christian, I think for Joe Golding, and you were at La Tech. We went to a Weatherford game. You ended up signing Anderson from that team. Man, he was a really good player too, and kind of had a different rap that people weren't giving him credit. And I remember you picked my brain. I was like, this guy's pretty sharp. I don't know if I'm right about what I'm saying, but I think I'm right. And then next thing you know, he ended up being a good player. And so it's just cool to see you doing what you're doing, man. You're born to do it, and awesome. Thanks for taking the time today. We'll let you have any words before you go, and let you keep leading your guys into battle, man.
No, I appreciate you having me on, Brian, and I appreciate our friendship. I always root for the good guys, and you're definitely one of those. And let's keep growing this game and doing all we can to help these young men be the best they can be.
Yep, absolutely, Coach. Well, happy holidays. I know you got a game afterwards that's not too exciting to prepare for Christmas, but try to enjoy the moment of Christmas before that game as best you can, and keep up the great work. It's awesome to see what you guys are doing.
No doubt. Happy holidays to your family, Brian.
Thanks, Coach.